Well, grace and peace. My name is Keith O'Neill, and I'm going to share some thoughts on addiction and grace. This is a book that was written by Gerald May. Very thought-provoking, at least the first chapter. Here's what he says in a first section of the book. He says, "I'm convinced that all human beings have an inborn desire for God," and I agree with that. I think that there's something in all of us that connects us to God at some level. He is the creator of everything, and so there's something inside of us, even if we don't know what it is, that attracts us to God, and that brings us to one of May's other points, and I'm quoting now. He says, "There are two forces that are responsible for our inability to fulfill God's commandments, and those two things are repression and addiction." And so I think even though we have this desire for God, we do repress it. There's some things that happen that represses the ability to connect with God and also to fulfill His commandments. Of course, addiction is a more severe type of this, and I'll talk about that a little bit in just a minute. He also talks about attachment to things. He calls them attachment nails, our desire to specific objects, and creates addiction. So the objects themselves aren't necessarily bad per se, but our attachment to those objects, whether that be objects, things, persons, places, our mindsets, our own thoughts, whatever it is, we become obsessed with it, and it creates this ability to have this addiction come upon them. I really liked and agree with this quote. It says, "The same processes that are responsible for addiction to alcohol and narcotics are also responsible for addiction to ideas, work, relationships, power, moods, fantasies, and an endless variety of other things." And so basically that just means we can be addicted to about almost anything. It's the attraction and the fact that we get attached to it to a degree that's beyond what we would consider to be normal. I think that causes the issues. And he talks, of course, about having mixed emotions. Listen, we want to be free, but we like our addictions too. I deal with that all the time, not only with myself personally, but in my teaching as a pastor, to try to get people to understand some of these desires are natural, but yet when we take them too far or take them and express them out of the correct or godly context, that is where we expose ourselves to becoming addicted. We really want to be free, but we like our stuff. We like to do what we want to do, and so that creates that whole problem. So May defines addiction as it is a state of compulsion, obsession, or preoccupation that enslaves a person's will and desire. So it comes upon us so strongly that we really can't help ourselves, at least in our own strength. And that's where grace comes in, and it's our hope for dealing with addiction, according to May. It's the only power that can truly vanquish its destructiveness. Grace is the invincible advocate of freedom and the absolute expression of perfect love. So when the grace of God interacts with our addictions and ourselves and the things that we're struggling with, it is the power of God, so to speak, that enables us to overcome those things. May says this: "It is not the objects of our addictions that are to blame for filling up our hands and hearts. It is our clinging to these objects, grasping for them, and becoming obsessed with them." You know, I think I think Paul talking about in Romans, he said we get enamored, or we serve or love the creature more than the creator. You know, we can't fall in love with God's stuff and the things that He creates more than Him, and that creates an issue, of course. The last thing I want to say about this is, you know, he talks about Paul's thorn in the flesh, and he talks in terms of, Paul describing this thing that is on me. I want to do right, but I can't do it, and I don't want to do wrong, but I do that, or whatever. I got this struggle going on. I believe correct analysis or exegesis or whatever of that, it's really Paul talking about pre-Jesus and post-Jesus, pre-Holy Ghost and post-Holy Ghost. But nevertheless, there is this struggle that seems to be pervasive in human beings, that we are subject or prone to addictive behavior in whatever area, because we like what we like. Let's just be straight. We like what we like, and so it becomes a hindrance to deliverance, which I'm going to talk about last, because we really don't fully want to be delivered sometimes. So when we talk about recovery and deliverance as a form of spiritual formation, it's this tension that the Spirit of God has with our flesh and our own human spirit that moves us toward being spiritually formed, I believe, as the Holy Spirit interacts with us and eventually convinces us in our own heart that it's better to be delivered even from something that our flesh really likes. In the long run, we'll be better off to let it go and let God deliver us from those things. And so we can have these addictions, but yet we can be free of them. I believe that we can be free if we will submit to God and the grace that He has made available to us. All right, God bless.